What happens when a President Trump tries to jail a Congresswoman? Jasmine Crockett for asking tough questions, only to watch her turn the nation against him overnight. The news hit like a thunderclap in the middle of a quiet Tuesday morning. President Donald Trump had instructed the Justice Department to pursue charges against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Not over corruption, not over bribery, not even over anything resembling a crime. His justification, he called her outspoken criticism of his administration a threat to national security. For a moment, Washington seemed to stop breathing. Journalists scrambled, pundits rushed to their studios, and average citizens sat at their kitchen tables, wondering if they had just witnessed the first real test of how far a president could go to silence his critics. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just another voice in Congress. She was fiery, fearless, and unfiltered. Her speeches in the House had already made waves, calling out hypocrisy with sharp precision and refusing to be bullied into silence. So when Trump went after her, it felt less like a legal maneuver and more like a declaration of war against dissent itself. The time couldn't have been more telling. Just a week earlier, Crockett had grilled a cabinet official on live television, demanding answers about missing federal funds tied to a controversial border project. Her questions had been pointed, her tone firm, and her refusal to back down had embarrassed the administration in front of millions. And now here came Trump trying to brand her questions as acts of sabotage. Inside her Dallas office, Jasmine sat across from her closest aides as the headlines lit up phone screens. "They're really going through with it?" she asked, holding the statement that had just come out of the White House press office. "Yes," replied her chief of staff, Marcus Hill, voice tight. "They've worded it as a review of hostile rhetoric, undermining national stability. They're making it sound like you're some kind of foreign agent." Jasmine exhaled slowly, leaning back in her chair. "National stability," she repeated, almost laughing. Since when did asking where taxpayer money went become a national threat? Her communications director, a sharp young woman named Kiara Lane, jumped in. "We can't let them control the narrative. If we don't move fast, they'll paint you as dangerous. People even hear your side." But Jasmine didn't look shaken. She looked more like someone calculating her next move. "Let them try," she said. "I won't be intimidated by a press release." Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump was sitting in the Oval Office, surrounded by his inner circle. The TV on the wall was tuned to a major network, flashing Crockett's face alongside bold red text. "Breaking Trump targets Congresswoman. This will send a message," Trump said flatly. "She wants to embarrass us. She wants to play games in front of the cameras. Fine. Let's see how tough she is when the Justice Department comes." Knocking, his attorney general shifted uneasily in his seat. "Mr. President, pushing this could raise questions." Trump cut him off. "Questions are fine. I want fear. They need to understand. You don't talk about me that way without consequences." Back in Dallas, Jasmine's phone rang non-stop. Reporters, colleagues, even strangers, offering support. Yet the strongest message came, not from allies in Congress, but from ordinary people. One call came from a retired teacher in Ohio. Another came from a mother in Arizona. The message was the same: to sick days, don't back down. "We're with you." That night, Jasmine sat in her living room, TV muted, her laptop open to a draft of a statement. Her husband walked in, concern written across his face. "You know, this isn't just politics anymore, right?" he asked. "They're trying to crush you." She looked up at him with steady eyes. "Then they'll find out weapons. When you try to crush the truth." The decision was made by morning. She would go public, not just to defend herself, but to put the president's actions on trial. In the court of public opinion, the storm had begun. Trump thought he was tightening his grip on power. In reality, he had just set the stage for one of the most explosive political battles in recent memory. But what Jasmine was about to do next would change the entire trajectory of the fight. By sunrise the next morning, Washington was already buzzing with speculation. Camera crews packed the sidewalks outside the Justice Department, hoping for a hint of what was about to unfold. Rumors spread fast. Was the president really serious about prosecuting a sitting congresswoman for threatening national security? Or was this just another show of force, meant to scare critics into silence? For Jasmine Crockett, there was waiting to see how it played out. She knew hesitation was dangerous. If she didn't seize the narrative quickly, Trump's team would define it for her. And once his words were out there, hostile rhetoric, sabotage, threat, it would take root in the minds of people who didn't know her or the facts. 9 hours or 9. Scrolling CNN, MSNBC, even Fox. They all want your reaction. Jasmine looked up from her notes. "Not yet. If I go on air now, It'll just look like I'm reacting to him. I want to look deliberate, not defensive. Her chief of staff, Marcus Hill, tapped the table for emphasis. Then we craft something sharp, clear, and factual. No rambling. Just cut right through the lies. Jasmine nodded. And I want it to be more than defense. I want people to see that this isn't just about me. If they can go after me, they can go after anyone who questions them. Across town in Washington, Trump's announcement was being spun by allies as a necessary step to protect the nation. Conservative radio hosts repeated the line that Crockett's speeches emboldened enemies abroad, while White House Press Secretary Linda Rowland appeared on morning shows, framing the move as a measured response to reckless conduct. But not everyone. Trump's orbit was sold behind closed doors. Republican senators whispered about the danger of setting such a precedent. One even muttered to a colleague in a Capitol hallway today, "It's Crockett tomorrow, it could be one of us." Meanwhile, Jasmine was crafting her message carefully. By late morning, stood in front of a mirror rehearsing. Her husband stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her every word. "Say it like you mean it," he urged. She repeated the line. "Criticism is not sabotage. Accountability is not treason." She paused, shook her head. "Too formal." He smiled faintly. "Not if you deliver it like you just did. People will feel it by noon." Jasmine was ready. Her staff alerted the press. She would be making a live statement at 2 p.m. outside her Dallas office. When the hour came, the street outside was packed with cameras, supporters holding handmade signs, and reporters elbowing for position. Texas heat bore down, sweat glistening on foreheads as Jasmine stepped to the podium in a simple navy blazer. The crowd quieted instantly. Her voice was steady. "Yesterday, the President of the United States accused me of being a threat to national security, not because I broke a law, not because I betrayed this country, but because I asked questions. Questions about where your tax dollars are going. Questions about accountability from those in power." The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Cameras clicked non-stop. "I want to make this clear," she continued, "asking tough questions of the government is not a crime. It's my duty. It's the duty of every elected representative, and if this administration believes it can silence one voice by threatening prosecution, then every American should ask themselves, who's next?" Her words carried sharp and unflinching. She didn't read from the page anymore, spoke directly to the people in front of her, her voice rising and falling with conviction. "What they call sabotage, I call accountability. What they call reckless, I call responsibility. And what they call a threat, I call the truth." The applause broke out before she even finished. Supporters cheered. Reporters shouted questions, and within minutes, clips of her speech spread across social media. On Twitter, hashtags like #StandWithCrocker and #TruthIsNotTreason began trending nationwide. But while Jasmine gained momentum, the White House scrambled. Trump, watching the coverage, the Oval Office, fumed as he saw networks replaying her words again and again. "She's grandstanding," he snapped. "We need to hit back harder." His aides shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a political advisor, who rarely spoke up, finally muttered, "Mr. President, it's already looking like you're trying to jail her for asking questions. That's not playing well." Trump's glare silenced the room. "Then we'll make it play well." But even as he said it, his grip on the narrative was slipping. Jasmine had lit the spark, and the fire was already spreading. But the real explosion would come just hours later. Faced the press again, not with a short statement, but with a blistering live press conference that would shake Washington to its core. By late afternoon, Washington and Dallas were locked onto the same event. Jasmine Crockett's next move, her short statement earlier in the day, had been powerful. It was only the opening salvo. Now her team was preparing something far bigger. A full press conference, with no prepared script, no dodging questions, and no fear. Inside her Dallas office, the air was electric. Phones buzzed, aides rushed back and forth, and the sound of printers spitting out brief notes filled the space. Jasmine sat calmly at the end of the conference table, scrolling through headlines on her tablet. Every outlet in America seemed to be running variations of the same line. "Trump accuses Crockett of threat to national security." Kiara Lane, her communications director, stood at a whiteboard, jotting bullet points. "We need to frame this as more than an attack on you," she said, marker squeaking as she wrote. "It's an attack on the system, on democracy itself. You're just the face of it today." Marcus Hill leaned forward in his chair. "And we need to be ready for the DOJ to announce some kind of review or preliminary inquiry. They'll want to make this look official." Jasmine glanced up. "Let them. If they try to make me into an example, I'll make myself into the counterexample. Every time they smear me, I'll tell the truth louder." The room fell quiet for a moment. Her staff knew it was taking a risk, speaking out so forcefully against a sitting president, one who thrived on counter-punching, could escalate the conflict beyond politics. But they also knew this was Jasmine. At her core, she had never been one to back down, whether it was a local courtroom fight in Texas earlier, or now in front of the entire nation. Her husband, who had quietly entered the room and leaned against the doorframe, finally spoke. "If you do this," he said softly, "there's no turning back. They're going to come at you with everything they've got." Jasmine looked at him steadily. "Good, that they're scared." At 6 p.m., the office parking lot had transformed into a media circus satellite. Trucks lined the street, cables ran like snakes across the pavement, and reporters jostled for space in front of the podium. A crowd of supporters pressed against barricades, holding handmade signs, "Truth and treason. We stand with Jasmine and accountability matters." As Jasmine stepped outside, the cheers nearly drowned out the reporters' questions. She adjusted the microphone, took a breath, and locked eyes with the cameras. "Good evening," she began. "I want to thank you all for being here. I know you heard the president's accusations, and I want to speak directly to the American people tonight." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "This is not about me. This is about the dangerous idea that criticism of the government can be treated as a crime. If asking tough questions makes me a threat, then every American who ever demanded answers is guilty too." Reporters' pens flew across notebooks. Camera shutters snapped. She went on, her voice steady, but rising with each sentence. "I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. That oath doesn't say protect the president's ego. It says defend the people's right to know. And when billions of your tax dollars vanish into projects with no accountability, I will ask questions. When officials dodge responsibility, I will press harder. That's not sabotage. That's my job." The crowd broke into applause, but Jasmine raised her hand to quiet them. "Understand the risk of standing here tonight. I know what happens to people who challenge power, but I will not be silenced, and I will not allow anyone, no matter how powerful, to rewrite the rules of democracy." A reporter from ABC shouted, "Congresswoman, are you afraid the DOJ might actually bring charges?" Jasmine leaned toward the microphone. "Afraid? No, concerned. Of course, but here's what I know. The truth is a stronger defense than any charge they could invent. And if this administration wants to test that in court, then let's go to court. I'll show them that accountability is not a crime." Word spread instantly. Within minutes, clips of her fiery declaration dominated every news broadcast. Commentators debated whether the president had overplayed his hand. Legal analysts warned that weaponizing the Justice Department against a sitting congresswoman was a constitutional crisis in the making. Inside the Oval Office, Trump watched the coverage, jaw set. "She's grandstanding," he muttered again, though the doubt flickered in his eyes. His advisors shifted uneasily, knowing the narrative was slipping further out of their control. But Jasmine wasn't finished. She took more questions, calm, under the heat of the cameras. When asked what message she wanted Americans to take away, she ended with words that would define the night. "Power unchecked is dangerous. Truth unspoken is deadly. We cannot afford either." The crowd roared in approval. Reporters scrambled to broadcast her every word. By the time she walked back into her office, she knew something had shifted. Trump had tried to put her on defense instead. She had gone on offense, and the entire country was watching. But the fallout from this moment was only beginning, and soon the media storm would grow into something even bigger than either side had anticipated. The press conference didn't just make headlines, it dominated the entire news cycle. By the next morning, clips of Jasmine Crockett's fiery speech were being replayed on every major network, her soundbites running side by side with Trump's earlier accusations. Anchors leaned forward in their chairs, eyebrows raised as they dissected her words on MSNBC. A constitutional law professor described her defense as one of the clearest rebukes of presidential overreach we've seen in decades. On CNN, a panel debated whether Trump's move was a calculated distraction from other scandals, or simply an impulsive strike at an opponent who embarrassed him. But it was the online response that truly set the stage. Hashtags like #StandWithCrocker and #TruthIsNotTreason surged to the top of Twitter trends, accompanied by viral videos of her declaring, "Power unchecked is dangerous. Truth unspoken is deadly." Clips of that line were edited into TikTok, montages shared on Instagram Reels, and replayed by influencers with millions of followers. By sunrise, Jasmine's words had become more than a statement. They were a rallying cry. Inside the White House, however, the atmosphere was tense. Trump paced behind the resolute desk, television screens flickering with images of Crocker
At the podium, "Look at this," he barked at his staff. "They're making her into a hero. A hero, she's a liar. And they're eating it up." Linda Rawlins, the press secretary, carefully placed her notepad on the desk. "Mr. President, the more we attack her directly, the stronger she looks. Maybe we reframe this as an issue of national unity, rather than about her personally." Trump cut her off with a wave of his hand. "No pivot, no backing down. She made me look weak, and I don't do weak. If she wants a fight, we give her one." An advisor sitting near the fireplace leaned forward. "But sir, even some Republican senators are nervous. They don't like the idea of prosecuting a sitting congresswoman over her words. It looks like censorship." Trump spun around, pointing a finger. "Let them be nervous. They'll fall in line when it counts. They always do." The room fell silent. Everyone knew better than to challenge him. When his voice hit that edge, still the unease lingered. Meanwhile, Jasmine was holding her ground by midday. She appeared live on Good Morning America, sitting across from the host. She looked calm, her words deliberate. "When I spoke yesterday," she said, "I wasn't just defending myself. I was defending every American who has the right to speak truth to power. The president can disagree with me, but he cannot criminalize disagreement. That's not democracy." The interviewer leaned forward. "Do you believe this is an abuse of presidential power?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "Yes, and history will judge it as such." The clip spread like wildfire by afternoon. Legal experts across the spectrum were weighing in. A conservative judge from Texas told Fox News, "I may not agree with politics, but prosecuting someone for speech is unconstitutional." Plain and simple. That unexpected defense caught attention, giving Jasmine's supporters even more ammunition. Her Dallas office transformed into a fortress of activity. Volunteers answered phones non-stop as calls of support poured in from across the country. Emails flooded in, some from people who admitted they had never heard of her before. "This moment, you're speaking for all of us," one message read at the same time. Jasmine knew she had to keep the pressure on. Sitting with her staff, she laid out the next steps. "We don't just react," she said. "We build rallies, town halls, online engagement. If he wants to make this about me, then fine. I'll make it about every American who's ever been told to shut up and sit down." Kiara tapped her laptop. "We can set up a live stream tonight, not just a speech but Q&A with regular people, then see you unfiltered." Jasmine smiled. "Perfect. Let's make this a conversation, not a broadcast." As the sun set, Jasmine went live from her office, fielding questions from citizens across the country. One came from a factory worker in Michigan. "Congresswoman, aren't you scared? They'll come after you harder." Jasmine looked directly into the camera. Of course I know they will, but I'm not here to live without fear. I'm here to live with purpose. And right now that purpose is making sure nobody can use power to silence the truth." The live stream drew hundreds of thousands of viewers, far more than her team had anticipated. Comment sections filled with words of encouragement. Donations flowed into her campaign site, and the national conversation shifted even more in her favor. Back in the White House, Trump slammed his remote onto the desk. As he watched the coverage, "She's everywhere. His chief strategist finally spoke. "Sir, you may have underestimated her." Trump shot him a glare, but the words lingered. For the first time, the possibility crept in. This fight might not be the show of dominance he had envisioned, but the real test wasn't media coverage. It was the mounting pressure on Trump's own allies, who were starting to feel the heat from their constituents. By the third day, it wasn't just a story anymore. It was the story. The clash between President Trump and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had consumed every headline, every morning show, every panel discussion on the networks. Hosts leaned in with urgency. "What we're watching," said a CBS anchor, "isn't just a political fight. It's a constitutional moment. Can the president really use the Department of Justice to intimidate a member of Congress across the dial?" The framing looked different. On Fox, pundits repeat talking points from the White House, calling Crockett reckless and irresponsible. Yet even there, cracks showed. A former Republican judge told a primetime host, "Look, I may not agree with her politics, but this is dangerous ground. You cannot jail people for asking questions." The host tried to pivot away, but the clip circulated online within minutes, fueling debate. Across social media, Twitter trended nonstop. TikTok teens stitched Jasmine's fiery quotes into their videos, setting them to dramatic music on Facebook. Retired teachers, pastors, and community leaders reposted her press conference with captions like, "This is why accountability matters." Her name spread far beyond her district in Texas. Suddenly, people in California, Ohio, and Florida knew exactly who she was. In Dallas, Jasmine's office resembled a newsroom. Screens lit up with live feeds, aids, monitored trend hashtags, and phone lines rang off the hook. Kiara scrolled through a flood of emails. We've got teachers in Kansas writing thank you notes. A group of veterans in Nevada wants to host a rally. In your honor and donations. They're spiking. Marcus looked up from his laptop. How much? Kiara raised eyebrows. Over $1 million in less than 48 hours. Small dollar donations. $10 here, $20 there. People are fired up. Jasmine leaned against the table listening. That's good, but we can't let this become about money. It has to stay about people. That afternoon, she agreed to a town hall in Fort Worth. The venue was small, but the energy was massive. People crammed into folding chairs, holding up their phones to live stream her every word. When she walked on stage, the applause shook the room. I didn't ask for this fight, she told them, microphone in hand. But since it came to me, I won't back away. If they try to silence one of us, they silence all of us. And I don't know about you, but I refuse to live in a country where asking questions is treated like treason. The crowd erupted. A retired nurse stood and shouted, "We've got your back, Jasmine." Others clapped, whistled, and stamped their feet. The event went viral within hours. Clips bouncing across Twitter and Facebook, racking up millions of views. Back in Washington, the pressure on Trump's allies was mounting. Constituents called their senators and representatives, non-stop demanding to know why the president was targeting Congresswoman over her words. Staffers logged the calls, grimacing as the numbers skewed against the White House's position. One senator from Arizona confided to a colleague in the Capitol cafeteria, "This isn't playing well back home. People see it for what it is, bullying." Another senator added, "Forcing us into a corner. Either we back him and look like authoritarians, or we break with him and risk his wrath." In the Oval Office, Trump was still fuming. His aides brought him poll numbers, showing a slip in approval, particularly among independents. He dismissed them with a wave. Fake polls care. What matters is strength. People respect strength. But his advisors exchanged looks. They knew strength was one thing, overreach was another, and right now the public was starting to see Jasmine, not Trump, as the one standing strong.
You know, sometimes the strongest partnership can crumble in minutes. Not with wars, not with sanctions. It breaks with one meeting, one refusal, one man who looks power in the eye and says, no. And tonight we're diving into that moment. The moment when Donald Trump did something unprecedented. He didn't blame a country. He didn't blame policies. He blamed one Indian. In his own words, that single person destroyed America. India relations. So, who is this man? What happened in that room where cameras weren't allowed? And how did one conversation change the trajectory of two superpowers? This isn't about trade numbers or defense deals. This is raw. This is personal. This is about the collision between American expectations and Indian pride. This is about one voice that refused to bend and made the most powerful man on earth take it personally. So stick with me, because once you hear what really went down behind those closed doors, you'll never see global politics the same way again. Look, it wasn't that long ago when India was just another developing country. That's the polite way the West used to say not important. They saw poverty. They saw chaos. They saw a nation grateful for whatever attention it got from the big player. What they completely missed was the hunger, the determination to rise. Today, India isn't asking for permission anymore. The International Monetary Fund says India is now the fastest growing major economy on the planet. While Europe fights recession and America worries about inflation, India is building. The numbers don't lie. GDP growth is outpacing Germany, Japan, even the US itself. This isn't just recovery, this is dominant. From the tech towers of Bangalore to the financial districts of Mumbai, money is flowing like never before. Since 2016, over 75,000 startups have launched, making India the world's third largest startup ecosystem. We're not talking about small businesses here. We're talking about billion-dollar valuations, unicorn companies, global tech giants being born every month. When COVID hit and the world panicked, what did India do? It became the pharmacy for how one Indian decision changed everything. Entire planet. Over 80 countries got their vaccines from India. The country that was supposed to need help became the lifeline for everyone else. While the West struggled with supply chains, India was exporting medicines, vaccines and medical equipment across the globe. And suddenly the power dynamic shifted. India wasn't the grateful recipient anymore. India had options, real options. This wasn't the same country that would nod and smile at whatever America offered. This is where our story really begins. Because Trump, being Trump, walked into this new reality, expecting the old rules to still apply. He expected India to be thankful. He expected compliance. He was about to meet the man who would change everything. Dr. S.J. Shankar, India's External Affairs Minister. If you don't know this name, you should, because this is the man who made Trump so furious that he personally blamed him for destroying the relationship between two nuclear powers. Jai Shankar isn't your typical diplomat. He doesn't do small talk. He doesn't flatter egos. He walks into rooms representing 1.4 billion people, and he acts like it. Sharp, strategic, and completely unimpressed by American pressure tactics. During Trump's presidency, everything was supposed to be on the table. Trade deals, defense partnerships, strategic alliances. Modi and Trump had their public friendship. Remember Howdy Modi? 70,000 Indians cheering Trump in Houston. Trump loved every second of it. But behind those camera-ready moments was a different story. Because while Modi was playing the diplomatic game, Jai Shankar was holding the line. And that line was simple. India will not be dictated to. The breaking point came during high-level talks that most people never heard about. Secret meetings, closed doors, no media. This is where the real business gets done. Trump's team came in expecting quick wins. They had their demands ready. They wanted India to stop buying weapons from Russia. They wanted India to reduce trade with Iran. They wanted India to pick America's side in every global dispute. Basically, they wanted India to become America's junior partner in Asia and be grateful for the privilege. The meeting was tense from the start. American officials laying out what they expected from India, making it clear. Trump exposes the real truth, that this wasn't really a negotiation. This was America telling India how things were going to be. Then Jai Shankar spoke cool, calm, completely unbothered by the pressure in that. His message was crystal clear. India makes its own decisions on defense, on trade, on foreign policy. America could either respect that or walk away. The silence that followed was deafening, because this wasn't how these meetings usually went. Countries like India were supposed to negotiate, maybe ask for something in return for compliance. They weren't supposed to just say no, but that's exactly what Jai Shankar did. No long explanations, no apologies, just a firm refusal to let America decide India's policy. You have to understand what a shock this was for Trump's team. They were used to dealing with allies who needed American approval, who feared American displeasure. But India had Russia for weapons, the Middle East for oil, Europe for trade, China for manufacturing. India didn't need to depend on America for anything, and that terrified them. When they pushed harder on the Russia weapons deal, Jai Shankar didn't blink. India would buy what it needed from whoever offered the best term. When they demanded India condemn Russia over Ukraine, Jai Shankar said India would stay neutral. When they wanted India to cut ties with Iran, Jai Shankar said India's energy security came first. Every American demand met with quiet, unshakable resistance. This drove Trump absolutely insane, because Trump's entire foreign policy was built on personal relationships. He needed world leaders to like him, to seek his approval, to make him feel important. But Jai Shankar, he treated Trump like any other world leader, equal, not superior. For Trump, being treated as equal felt like disrespect. The final straw came during defense talks. America wanted India to cancel its purchase of Russian S-400. Trump's team made it an ultimatum: buy American or face consequences. This kind of pressure usually worked. Most countries would cave rather than risk American anger. Jai Shankar's response was ice cold. India will make decisions based on India's interests. That's what sovereign nations do. Sovereign nations. Those two words hit like a bomb in that room. Obama's motivational perspective on leadership, because what Jai Shankar was really saying was, we're not your colony. We're not your puppet. We're an independent country that makes independent choices. And Trump took it very, very personally.
After that meeting, everything changed. The public smiles continued for a while. Modi and Trump still appeared together at events, but behind the scenes, the relationship was freezing over. Trade negotiations that should have been straightforward suddenly became impossible. Defense cooperation hit roadblock after roadblock. Trump started complaining publicly about India's trade practices. He ended India's preferential trade status. He began talking about India like it was an adversary instead of an ally. Then came the moment that revealed everything. In a private conversation that later became public, Trump said the words that showed exactly how personal this had become. It's not India that's the problem. It's one Indian who destroyed our relationship. One Indian. He was talking about Jai Shankar, the man who dared to say no. This is where the story gets interesting, because Trump's anger revealed something important about how power really works. It's not just about countries or policies. It's about people. It's about ego. It's about respect. Trump didn't feel rejected by a nation. He felt rejected by a person. And when someone like Trump feels personally rejected, he doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. He takes it out on everyone. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. Jai Shankar didn't insult Trump. He didn't attack America. He didn't even raise his voice. All he did was refuse to pretend that India should be grateful for whatever America offered. That refusal changed everything because it showed the world something that Washington didn't want anyone to see. America couldn't just order other countries around anymore. Even allies had choices now. Even partners could say no. And when India said no, it didn't collapse. It didn't get punished. It got stronger. While Trump was complaining about India, Indian companies were signing deals with American businesses worth billions. While Trump was threatening sanctions, India was building partnerships with Europe, Japan, Australia, even China. Despite border tensions, the European Union started talking about strategic partnerships with India. Japan increased its investment. Australia signed comprehensive trade agreements. India proved something that sent shockwaves through Washington. In the modern world, no single country gets to dictate terms to everyone else. And it all started with one man saying no in a conference room. Let me tell you why this matters beyond just politics. Janka understood something most people never learn. Your power doesn't come from making others comfortable. It comes from knowing your worth and refusing to accept less. Think about your own life. How many times have you been in situations where someone expected you to be grateful for scraps, where they assumed you'd say yes because you needed them more than they needed you? Jai Shankar shows us what happens. Trade wars, tariffs, and global power shifts. When you walk into any room, knowing your value. When you refuse to play games where you're supposed to feel lucky just to be there. Some people get angry. Some people try to punish you. But others start treating you with the respect you always deserved. Fast forward to today. Trump is back in power as of January 20. The relationship between America and India is still complicated, but something fundamental has changed. America no longer assumes India will automatically agree. American businesses know they have to compete for Indian partnerships. American politicians know they have to treat India as an equal. And Jai Shankar, he's still there, still calm, still refusing to accept anything less than respect. The man Trump blamed for destroying the relationship became the architect of India's new global position. A position where India doesn't choose sides in other people's fights, where India makes its own decisions, where India partners with everyone but belongs to no one. This is strategic autonomy, and it drives traditional powers crazy, because it means you can't be controlled, can't be predicted, can't be taken for granted. When Russia invaded Ukraine, everyone expected India to condemn Russia and join sanctions. India chose neutrality, not because it supported the war, but because it refused to let others write its foreign policy. When China and India had border clashes, everyone expected India to automatically align with America. Instead, India handled it directly while maintaining trade with both countries. But this story goes beyond Trump and Jai Shankar. This is about how power shifts in the modern world. For 70 years, global relationships worked one way. America set the rules. Everyone else followed. If you followed well, you got rewards. If you didn't follow, you got punished. That system worked when America controlled half the world's economy, and had the only serious military force. But that world doesn't exist anymore. Today, there are multiple power centers. China has massive economic influence. India has enormous population and growing wealth. Europe has huge markets. Russia has nuclear capabilities. In this new reality, countries don't have to choose between America and everyone else. They can pick America for some things, China for others, Europe for still others. They can be strategic, they can be selective, they can be independent. And that's exactly what India decided to do. When America said choose us or China, India said we'll choose what's best for India. When America said buy our weapons or face consequences, India said we'll buy the best weapons, regardless of source. When America said support our position on Russia, India said we'll support peace, not sides. This wasn't anti-American policy. This was pro-Indian strategy. But to Trump it felt like betrayal, because he was used to countries needing American approval to survive and prosper. The US-India situation wasn't unique. During Trump's presidency, he had similar conflicts with Germany's Angela Merkel, France's Emmanuel Macron, Canada's Justin Trudeau. The pattern was always identical. Trump would meet foreign leaders, expecting difference. When he got partnership instead of submission, frustration would build. Lessons for leaders and youth today. When he got independence instead of compliance, anger would explode. And usually he'd blame one specific person, not the entire country, not the system, one individual who had the audacity to treat him as an equal rather than a superior. Here's why this story matters beyond international politics and diplomatic drama. It's about how power works in your personal life. Every single day, you walk into situations where people expect you to accept less than you deserve. Your boss who wants longer hours for the same salary. Your client who demands more work for the same payment. Your relationships where you're expected to compromise your values to keep others comfortable. In those moments you face the same choice Jashenka faced: accept unequal terms to maintain peace, or demand equal treatment and risk losing the relationship entirely. Most people choose the first option. They accept less because they fear losing what they have. They stay quiet because they fear conflict. They compromise their principles because they fear consequences. But here's what Jashenka understood that most people miss completely. Sometimes relationships aren't worth keeping if they require you to accept less than you deserve. Sometimes peace isn't worth maintaining if it requires silence about unfairness. Sometimes safety isn't worth preserving if it demands compromising your core value. When Jashenka said no to Trump, he wasn't trying to be difficult or stubborn. He was demanding to be respected as an equal, and respect can never be given as charity. Respect must be earned through strength. Sometimes earning respect requires risking rejection completely. The people who shape history, who change industries, who build movements, who create lasting legacies, they're not the ones who always say yes to everything. They're the ones who know exactly when to say no. They understand that some relationships are only valuable on equal terms. They would rather walk away from bad deals than accept bad deals. They measure success not by what they avoid losing, but by what they refuse to tolerate. So the next time someone questions your worth, your position, your right to equal treatment, remember this exact moment. One diplomat, one conversation, one stand that changed global dynamics forever. Because that's how real change happens. That's how nations rise from followers to leaders. And that's how individual voices can echo across the entire world. You don't have to fight loudly to be powerful. You just have to know exactly final message that will inspire you, who you are, and what you won't compromise. And when pressure comes, when demands are made, when people expect you to shrink to make them comfortable, that's when your character gets tested. Jashenka passed that test. He showed the world that New India doesn't ask for respect, it commands respect. He demonstrated that dignity isn't negotiable, even when dealing with the world's most powerful leaders. This moment matters because it proves that principled resistance can reshape entire relationships.